in the Sustainable Development Goals, we are saying we should leave no one behind and start with the farthest first.
Innovation is a key part of the recovery process.
We set up the first assistive tech accelerator in Africa to support innovators who are building technology to support persons living with disability.
Anybody who is interested in trying a person with disability in employment, contact us.
We work like thrice as hard.
We have to remember that there's 15% of the population that's being left out if your products and services are not accessible.
My name is Luke Kizito Ojambo Mleka. I'm the founder and managing director of Science Media Kenya Limited. Science Media Kenya Limited is a company that is operating on a social enterprise model. And what we do, we have two products. One that we started way back in 2015, which is the Science TV. Science TV is a TV station broadcasting in sign language with voice overrides, in which most of the show hosts, producers, and I would say the people that are involved in that show, in the TV, are persons with disabilities. And then 2020, in the middle of COVID, we came up with another application that was a response towards the various needs that are coming up out of COVID. You remember people were inventing various types of masks. You realize that there are some people who invented masks for the deaf to have at least lips can be read. So we thought about it and we realized that there is a product that will be missing out, and that is proper sign language interpretation for a deaf person in isolation. So that's why we invented a mobile communication application called Assistol. Assistol helps a deaf person to access sign language interpretation services whenever they are, and now for the first time 24 hours, because you realize that they have, having been in this space of disability for quite some time, I've realized that deaf people, they're lacking up in employment opportunities, they're not accessing healthcare properly, some of them are struggling at higher education and tertiary institutions. Think about it. Even when we are traveling in our, assuming you've gotten to your flight, there is a point where an interpreter cannot go. But as a deaf person, you don't have every time to pay for an interpreter to travel with you. So Assistol goes beyond where an interpreter cannot access. And that means it's cheap, it's affordable, and it's very effective. And the sign language interpreters are qualified and very well vetted. One of the guys who was ushered into disability at a very, let me say day one of my being on this world, because the person or the lady that I have always struggled to get this term properly, the person you follow, I don't know how they are called, but the girl that I follow in our family, she passed on in 2019 December, but she was deaf and epileptic. So I remember any visitor who would come at home, and this was my aunties, because to them they had not grown around any person with deafness. So when they will come around, I'm the only one who will assist them in rudimentary sign language. I was not a professional, just rudimentary sign language. Then something struck me that anytime we'll congregate around TV those days, she would be locked up in her own world, because she would not understand any programming on TV. Then come to Nairobi, I enrolled to, of course, the church, the local church that I was attending in the estate. It had a service for the deaf. Then it took me interest to know, how do deaf get entertained? We picked some youth, talked to the community, the deaf community. We came up with because now I stopped attending the main service, I started attending service that has sign language. So I reached out to that community and found out, are there any deaf persons who would be interested to do music? Because in high school, I was I was singing in the school choir. So I was interested to write music, have it translated into the English version of the sign language, then have an interpreter to pull it now through to them to practice. So when we did that, I would say that I was working with a young man called Laldagi. Another one was Peter. Just all of them were the deaf. So what happened is, after time went by, I realized that Laldagi was so interested, and he picked it up and he started looking for people who would support him. At that time, of course, the funds that I was using had dried down. So he came back to me and asked me, boss, we've been doing this now, I have 6 songs. Where can I play them on TV? So what happened is, it started bothering me. We reached out to some producers of some film in the US, because I knew that we cannot just have a program on TV that has only music. So we reached out to other producers who would be interested to give us some contracts to distribute films, probably in that. So I was going around to the TV stations looking for only 30 minutes, and probably after 11, I thought that would be enough. But shock on me, no one was able to admit us. Then I will not mention here how it happened, but the last day that I was tired, I went to, that time it was CCK, to report that I've been visiting these guys, no one is ready to give me this opportunity. They laughed at me, they told me, you cannot change people's business model. We want to give you, instead of 30 minutes, we'll give you 24 hours. So that is why I was given a license. That time I was working in the banking sector. I had not run a TV station, I didn't know what to do. But I knew that this is the right thing I wanted to do. 2015, come all the way 2017, of course you remember that time was analog digital migration. So I had time to breathe and research. But unfortunately, no TV station in the world was actually broadcasting for the type of this type of programming. So what I did is, after that, I sat down and decided that this is how we are going to broadcast. All our music will be in sign language. All our films will have inclusion. All a good portion of the presenters, because right now 80% of our show hosts are persons with disabilities. We did what we call a social enterprise model, that we're not purely going for profits or going for as a business that is oriented in profits, but profits becomes as a result of doing good. Doing good means we are trying to showcase the possibilities of persons with disabilities. So I will say and mention here that the organizations that have come up and they're embracing this. And I would say an organization whom we work closely, like Safaricom, an organization like KCB, whom we're working closely. Some of them, I will not mention all of them, but you realize this organization, and I'm not saying that some of them are not working with us, I'm just highlighting those that have come up in inclusion space. For example, if I would specifically mention like KCB, the Tujiajiri a platform that has actually helped them to see how to include persons with disability. And you realize that Safaricom is one of the biggest employers of persons with disabilities. And this has gone ahead in realizing that, yes, we are employing, but are we also communicating? We are communicating, but are we making our spaces inclusive? As we are making these spaces inclusive, our HR policies are accommodating enough for persons with disabilities. I will tell you that one of the things we come and realize is that in most of our interviews, when we are doing them as in the corporate sector, we have a panel of 15 people that are actually interviewing someone. They don't know that some people, because of certain disabilities, invisible disabilities, they, like dyslexic persons, they will not be comfortable to have that panel of interviewers interviewing them for a job. So he'll perform poorly. He or she will perform poorly, not because they wanted, but because the corporates that were advertising did not, first of all, look into it and realize that there will be a person with disability in this interview because they perform very well at the academics. But when it comes to now this type of setup, they don't want to ask you, are there any specific considerations that we want included in the interview? So you'll find that some people drop off not because they performed poorly in the interviews, but simply because the environment was not very good.
What do you intend to do in the next episode of SOL?
In 2020, during COVID-19, it found everybody in a manner that you didn't know what to do. So everyone was coming up with, what can we do or what can I do to help the world, help my communities around? And there are so many things. For example, the first communications that we helped the government to do as an organization, Science TV, the government was saying, first of all, social distance. But visually impaired persons actually walk holding the guide at the elbow. And we're being told, sneeze at that elbow so that you don't spread COVID. So what we did immediately was had a little bit of research and say that we are going to tell or advise a visually impaired person that you can actually hold the shoulder of your guide and it's still okay. Because again, there is always the standard approved walking distance between the guide and the visually impaired person. Then it came to the issue of sanitizing. We are told wash your hands and sanitize. But people on the physical spectrum use assistive devices, which are likely also to be carrying the viruses. So how do we advise? Wash your hands, sanitize, but also sanitize your assistive devices. Persons with the albinism, they are sensitive with their skin. So are these sanitizers affecting them? So we had to encourage and communicate that, listen, these sanitizers are not affecting you in any way or affecting your skin. Then the next item was the deaf. There was a case in Western Kenya where a deaf person was actually beaten past curfew hour. He didn't know, and the police did not know that this is a deaf person. So by the time it came to realize that actually passage of inclusive in communication or inclusive information is very important, it was late. So that's why we jumped in. And doing that communication, we told the deaf, you have to observe what the government is communicating through other media, the partnerships from the media houses with the government to ensure that this is happening. Then now it came, the mother of all troubles for the deaf. If you are in isolation, even the doctor coming into isolation room will be covered. Having face mask with probably shields on the face, the hands will be covered. If a deaf person will be in isolation, then it means the interpreter going there must be in the same format. How do we communicate? The nightmare started. Quickly, we thought of now getting the interpreter out of the room, get into the virtual space. Initially, we thought we'll do it having like a platform whereby we get our communication, then we have to develop a communication link. What we did is we came up with now an innovation. We started building on an innovation, having called developers and sitting down and just directing how it will. I'm not a developer because my training is totally different. So I had to outsource this service and get this person to understand what I wanted. We decided we were going to come up with a minimum viable product that is able to do video, voice. The video means that the interpreter and the deaf should be able to see each other. But the voice means that Becky, who is a doctor and attending to the deaf, is able to listen to what the interpreter is saying.
And I want to say, Assist All has helped me at work here at Science TV.
We live on 24th of September. This was actually out and we were able to launch it available on Google Play Store. being accessed by the phones on the Android, using Android operating system. So that is how we got Assistol and to be launched and now being able to help the deaf to communicate. Then we realized this app is actually going to do a lot of things. That is when challenges were being, then we realized that UNDP has actually announced a certain challenge to people for people to showcase their responses and innovations towards COVID-19. We submitted our application, knowing that this will help us do what to get. There was a boosting of the innovation, just to give it the robustness that it requires, because I know in the innovation you don't innovate once and it goes. So we submitted our minimum viable product to be helped to boost it in a manner that it's able to get to a level whereby now it will be something a bit great to the market. Of course, we were not able to develop fully the way we would have, but it got us to a certain level whereby we can say it's now able to hold around 100 interpreters. If they came on, we're able to get a situation whereby now it's stable. So we realized that that is how we were able to participate in the challenge, and we were lucky to be selected among some of the organizations that were submitting for this challenge that the UNDP announced.
Innovation is a key part of the recovery process and the rebuilding process within the COVID landscape. And we've seen this really clearly in some of the innovations that came out of Kenya. Just in 2020 alone, we had the 9-year-old boy, Stephen Wambukota, who designed a foot-operated hand-washing station. We had the Kenyatta University students who developed the ventilators. We had the Kenyan company Gumzo launching Africa's first video conferencing app. So this was just in 2020 alone. You can see how much innovation, and that's just what we know. So there's a lot more that was bubbling under the surface. So I think for us as a UNDP Accelerator Lab, we're really keen on seeing how do we connect what is happening within the development space and within the government with what innovators are coming up with. So we know that the innovation space moves very quickly and is very agile. And you can't really wait for the government to catch up. But how can we kind of connect some of those dots so that these innovations are being embedded within the strategies and the agendas that we are coming up with as we are looking ahead. And I think the key part of that is investing in the partnerships and the networks, because this is not something that a single entity can do, but we need to kind of come together and try, and everyone bringing on board their different strengths, and then we all collectively pull together to then get to that next level.
Kenya is, I think, particularly well suited because there is a lot of knowledge here. There is a lot of highly educated and entrepreneurial people around that really can contribute to the development and finding local solutions. And UNDP launched this also in the framework of the Peace and Security Program to see how we can better include people with disabilities.
We must have civil society organizations. We must have the private sector, development partners, the UN system working together to make sure that we leave no one behind.
This call, particularly for inclusion of disability, one sees the interest among the youth-led companies and entities coming forward with their innovative ideas. But also under other programs such as the support to devolved governments, we have worked with select county governments, and the case in point is Isiolo county government, where in partnership and with the support of the British High Commission, we were able to establish a youth innovation center. Through that youth innovation center, we have learned that at least every day 200 young people are coming there to use the Youth Innovation Center for networking, for training, but also just to get facilities such as the internet to be able to hone their skills on the digital economy.
Fulham were relegated from the Premier League on Monday after losing 2-0 at home to fellow strugglers Burnley.
So how does the Assist All app work?
Becky, I can't really explain how it works. What I want to do is I want to take you to a meeting that is happening right now. And there is an interpreter who is attending to a certain function, but had to appear in that meeting. So I'll show you in a demonstrating way how it works, because I can't explain. Let's go.
And I've been working with 3 people. David, Ben. Okay, I'll say Corona has brought us a lot of things. First, to take care of ourselves. Like, our lifestyles have changed because we have to move everywhere with masks. We have to keep social distancing.
Okay. And how has the app...
Vicky, back to you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Tell her thank you. All right. So, and just like that, I've been able to communicate to Ruth through the Assist All app. I've been able to communicate to Ruth. Like I say, this can be used by people from all service providers. We've seen quite a number of times a lot of deaf people going to seek services. Even just like Ruth told us earlier, she went to a chemist and she could not be able to order medicine because the attendant, would not understand her. But through Assist All app, she was able to purchase the medication that she needed to purchase. So this is actually an app for everyone and anyone, and especially service providers, because we get to interact with the deaf on a day-to-day basis. You don't know at what point you need to interact with them. So the Assist All app is here to help with that. Quite a great innovation, a disability inclusive innovation.